For about a year now, I've been warning that central government is taking far too much power, taking away too many of our liberties and doing things without due process. And the reason for that is the Coronavirus Act allows ministers to take the most draconian decisions without, in the legislation, ever making them go to Parliament to have a debate and a vote first. Previously, whether it's the Civil Contingencies Bill or the Public Health Act, governments could not take those levels of power without first going to Parliament. But yesterday, all of this went, in my view, a step too far. This was Matt Hancock yesterday in the House of Commons.
Third, Mr. Speaker, we'll be backing this new system with strong enforcement of both home quarantine and hotel quarantine. And we'll be putting in place tough fines for people who don't comply. We're also coming down hard on people who provide false information on the passenger locator form. Anyone who lies on the passenger locator form and tries to conceal that they've been in a country on the red list in the 10 days before arrival here will face a prison sentence of up to 10 years. These measures will be put into law this week.
Yep, you heard it right. A year ago, they couldn't care less about our borders. 18 million people flew into the United Kingdom without anybody being checked or asked to quarantine at all. Here we are a year on, they've gone the other way. 33 countries placed on the red list. If you come into Britain from one of those, you're whisked off to a hotel. You've got to stay there for 10 days. You'll get a bill of £1,700. But if you were, for argument's sake, to put on your passenger locator form that you come in from Spain when you'd actually come in from Portugal, which is on the red list, you would face up to 10 years in prison. That is what Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, has decided without public debate, without consulting Parliament. The man is just completely drunk on his own power, allowed to do so because we've got terrible legislation. But that, of course, now doesn't satisfy the Labour Party. Oh no, the Labour Party, who've been for mass migration and open borders for decades, they now think we're not even tough enough.
Every week the Prime Minister comes here and says we've got one of the toughest regimes in the world. We know his Home Secretary disagrees with him. We know the Health Secretary disagrees with him. Luckily, Mr. Speaker, Oxford University keep track of how tough border restrictions are in every country. They say that there are at least 33 countries around the world which currently have tougher restrictions for the United Kingdom. 33, Prime Minister, including Canada, Denmark, Japan, Israel. There are many others. In fact, they say we're not even in the top bracket of countries for border restrictions.
So Keir Starmer saying, actually, many countries are doing this tougher and better than us. And of course, north of the border, Nicola Sturgeon wants everybody to go off to a hotel for 10 days. But the point about this is about our liberties. This is about our freedoms. And the more power central government takes, the more difficult it is to get those freedoms back. I think we'd all thought that once everybody over 50 had been vaccinated, life could pretty much return to normal. And yet, Grant Shapps, telling us yesterday, the Transport Secretary, don't go booking any holidays, as if to say you won't be able to fly abroad at any point this summer. Now, in the midst of all of this, the Prime Minister is pretty much missing in action. We're told that on February the 22nd, he will tell us what the next steps towards us coming out of lockdown are. But frankly, I think what Johnson should do is get Matt Hancock into his office, tell him to row back on 10 years in prison if you fill in your passenger locator form wrong. I mean, goodness me, serious knife offences, sexual offences do not get 10-year prison sentences. This has gone too far. It's mad. And you know something? Actually, it is dangerous. A government out of control is dangerous. I learnt today from David Davis, one of the few backbench MPs that actually does stand up and fight for our liberty, that there's another statutory instrument going through allowing the police to access whatever health records they need. I kind of get it that we're going to have some form of passport to say we've been vaccinated to travel abroad. What I don't want is for us to finish up with people in the street being stopped, asked to produce their papers to prove that they've been vaccinated. And with this government as out of control as it is, as we've seen in the last 24 hours, I think any of these things are possible. The difficulty is, what can we do? What can we do? Well, the only thing we can do, as with all of these things, is to lobby our MPs and to say we want some balance and we don't want big decisions being taken unless the government goes to the House of Commons, has a debate and has a vote. We are now being governed by diktat. We are in a place that would have been unimaginable to anybody in this country just a year ago. And yet, if you believe the opinion polls, a majority of you think that 10 years in prison for filling in your form wrong is right. I don't believe the opinion polls. I think as a nation, we've always believed in liberty. We've always believed in freedom. I think this is a step too far. And I think we really do have to stamp our feet and tell our MPs this is not the kind of country we want to live in. There is, of course, one exception to all of this. If you come into the UK illegally by dinghy across the English Channel on the next calm day, the fact that you've got no documentation, the fact you've not had a PCR coronavirus test in the previous 3 days, none of that will matter. And you will still get put into a hotel. The difference is nobody will charge you £1,700 for the privilege. If ever there was a moment to start dealing with illegal immigration, surely it's now. If we're going to get tough with our borders, Mr. Starmer, Mr. Johnson and others, is this not the moment to say, we will not accept people coming criminally into the United Kingdom and posing a massive coronavirus risk? That's what I'd like to see. At least something good could come out of all of this, although, I tell you what, it won't happen.
We will make America great again.